Hi everyone, my name is Andrea Zimmering. My company name is Bite Wellness Consulting. I work with individuals who are struggling to find a peaceful relationship with food and want help with figuring out how they can eat for themselves, to optimize how they feel, to stop struggling with their relationship and feeling burdened by food, and to create patterns that are sustainable and helpful when deciding what to eat and how to eat.
Thanks, Andrea, for joining us. I know that you and I have talked a little bit about Bite Wellness Consulting and what you do with clients, but I thought this would be a really good opportunity for me to share your experience with our clients, as well as with the people that view our YouTube channel, to learn a little bit more about what nutrition consulting can do for them and how they can, like you said, get some freedom from their relationship with food. Something else I was wondering about, and I think some of the viewers might also be interested in, is what is your perspective on the mind-body relationship and how do you address this in your work?
I've been exploring that a lot, in particular for the past 3-4 months, recognizing that we often live from our neck up in our mind and not so much in our body, whereas they are really connected. We know now, talking about gut microbiome, that our gut, which is, part of our body, speaks to our brain and vice versa, but moving into our whole body to discover where we're holding things and how the way that we move and the way that we feed ourselves can affect the way that we feel. So there is such a big component to that. But talking about mindfulness in particular, so one way of kind of accessing mindfulness is, for example, through meditation. And when you are meditating, you're giving yourself the opportunity to sit with what arises and creating space for yourself and non-judgment for yourself. And a lot of the tools that we use when creating mindfulness practices are ones that we can use when we go to eat. When we're more in touch with our body and how it's feeling, I'm feeling really tired, maybe I need to sleep instead of eat. And we can't really know that unless we start to dig deeper into our body and where we're experiencing different feelings. So one would be getting deeper into when we feel something in our body, the more that we have the capacity to sit with that and experience it without so much judgment, we can make decisions that are a little bit more positive for ourselves at times.
A follow-up question, do you see or do you work at all with intuitive eating or mindful eating with your clients?
Yeah, that's actually probably the thing that I work on most with clients is the intuitive and mindful eating. I believe that there is 110% necessity for understanding nutrition and educating about nutrition if you don't have that. But then once we've moved past that, it's all about mindful eating and intuitive eating. There's so many principles that I like to work by. Non-judgment of the food that you're eating, awareness, just building awareness of how you're eating and what you're eating, just being aware, right, of what every day that looks like so it doesn't become so automatic. Building that trust with ourselves. So all of those principles around mindful and intuitive eating really are filtered through that mind-body connection when approaching food and nutrition.
Sometimes people will come in and they'll want to work with a professional who works with food and their relationship with food, that type of thing. And I think sometimes they have questions about, what is the difference between a nutritionist like yourself and somebody who is a dietitian?
Both a dietitian and a holistic nutritionist uses food as the main medium in terms of making recommendations with their clients. The differences lie in the education. So whereas a nutritionist has a certification program, a dietitian has a undergraduate degree. As a holistic nutritionist, I can talk about my program. It was a 2-year certificate program with a 100-hour co-op placement, and we took a wide range of classes. So we would study chemistry, we studied anatomy, and then we went into more alternative modes of healing. So Ayurveda, for example. We looked at sports nutrition. We did one just on more of the psychology of eating. There's a really diverse range of types of classes that you take as a holistic nutritionist. From my familiarity with dietitians, there was, generally speaking, more of a focus on the Canada Food Guide. And I don't know where they stand now in terms of when they're making recommendations with their clients, but we learned about the Canada Food Guide, but that doesn't necessarily serve as a basis of how we work with our clients. Holistic nutritionists tend to focus on the full picture of a client, looking at lifestyle and nutrition. Generally speaking, dietitians will always be covered, whereas nutritionists, under extended benefits, nutritionists, it's kind of dependent on the plan.
And I know that you are very sensitive to and aware aware of the impact of kind of like the morality, or like you said, the shame that's associated with how people eat. I'm wondering like how you go about talking about whole foods with people in a way that doesn't kind of push them towards, oh, I'm eating something better, therefore I'm better and I'm doing well, where that might kind of shift into maybe like an orthorexia approach to eating. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on that.
That's such a good question. For myself, I try to, language is so important. So when working with a client, instead of saying, do not eat this food, it's bad, only eat this food, it's good, whether I'm talking even just about whole foods, it's what do we want to eat more of? What do we want to include a little bit more of in our diet? So we're not excluding certain foods or shaming or victimizing certain foods. We're just saying, what right now do we want to have a little bit more of? That doesn't mean we need to have less of anything. It's just what do we want to increase? And that way we don't get into that orthorexic mindset of these foods are bad, these foods are good, this is how I'm going to eat. I'm still eating, but it's really intense and really rigid. It's more of these foods are the foods that fuel me more. Let's keep sticking on these foods. And it comes down to language and how we view food, for sure. And working with clients in that kind of domain.
Yeah, and that sounds really similar to kind of my approach with clients is I want to do things that are going to take care of me. And so that might be eating something that's more of a whole food because I care and love myself so much that I want those things in my body. And I also eat all the other stuff that I really enjoy eating as well. But it's not about I'm doing this because I have to or that there's some kind of restriction on it, but more of like, this is self-care. This is how I do self-care.
Exactly. It doesn't need to become, like what you were saying, such a moral dilemma that certain foods make you bad or good. It comes down to sticking on those positive sides of why you're choosing foods you are.
And I wonder too if that's a bit of that shift when you mentioned earlier, when people will be very fearful because they think to themselves, if I stop restricting, I'm going to just go completely the other way. And I'm only going to eat things that right now I'm really drawn to because they have a lot of sugar or they taste really good and they're the things that make us feel good when we eat them. But I think it's maybe just a longer process, that it's harder to see where the end is going to be for somebody, that it's going to take some time, but eventually you will start repairing that relationship with your body, that you're wanting to eat some of those other things as well.
Yeah, this intuitive eating or whole foods based way of seeing food, this trust-based way, it's not an easy sell because it doesn't make promises that eat a certain way like XYZ and you're going to be a certain way by X time and this is super controlled and rigid. It's really opening up some of the most powerful and warrior-like behavior and adjustments that you have to make without any exact promises other than these hopeful ideas around and truthful ideas around just giving yourself some freedom and starting to build a little bit of a net of great sustainable support around how you eat and choosing foods that work for you.
So there are always different trends with eating and fad diets of type, but something that we're hearing a lot about right now is the keto diet and intermittent fasting. And I was just wondering what your views were on that.
That's another really good one. So just acknowledging our audience and the fact that everyone will have probably a different opinion on these diets. And so I come from a place of trying to acknowledge objectively what these diets do and how and why they exist, and then trying to recognize that individuals are impacted differently from these diets. Back to my stick in your own lane top recommendation for people. Just giving a high level explanation of these diets. They've come into our mass culture society for a reason, because at times they have worked. Ketogenic, I believe it was started to help people with Alzheimer's, the basis being that our body and our brain uses glucose primarily for energy, but if we reduce the level of carbohydrates in our body, we start to use something called ketones, hence the name keto diet. Intermittent fasting, there's a number of places I believe it's come from, but the idea around intermittent fasting is we eat in a short window time frame, and the rest of the time it allows our body to focus on things that are not related to digestion, repairing in other ways. There's also this that dates back to the hunter and gatherer time era where we were gathering food, eating, and then fasting until we could get food again. There wasn't just a fridge to open up and get food from. There's a reason that these have come in, and for some this might work, but for others it might work for a short time. And what we might find is that it feeds into the diet culture. And thinking about our why we're starting a diet, even if it is one that almost every other person around you seems to be doing, is important. And then recognizing what this means for how will we be in the long term. There's a big truth around the pendulum swing, meaning We start a diet, we see success, we deprive, and then we swing the other way. Does this happen for everybody? No. But I think a really, really important thing to look at is your history. History can speak a lot. So if you have been on diet after diet after diet, and then keto diet seems like it's going to be your answer to all your problems, that might be where you have to do some of that personal reflection, that mind-body work to say, you know what, I think I might be feeding into that same idea that I need to be on a diet. There might be someone else who has a serious health concern, and it really makes sense on a physiological level that they reduce their glucose for maybe their brain health. That's where these diets are very controversial, because it would be impossible to say you cannot get results from these. I think we need to acknowledge what they can do, but I think we need to take, most importantly, into account every individual who you are and look at your history and then make educated decisions based off that.
I think that's a really good point you make too, that there's a reason that there's controversy, and there's a reason that it's a hot topic, and even a reason that I'm asking you about it, because it's not such a straight black or white answer. There's a lot of gray area in there.
Exactly. I mean, that's why it's so prominent in our culture right now. And that's why coming back to yourself is the most important part when deciding whether or not, you want to jump on those bandwagons, and really knowing who you are. So I know I wouldn't do well on a keto diet. I would swing a million and one ways if I did. But, maybe my friend Sally would do better for whatever reason, coming from that place of knowing who you are in that way.
And I like your idea too of stay in your own lane. I'm thinking when you mentioned that intermittent fasting may have come from an earlier point in our evolution, but those weren't times that we were at work at 8 a.m. and having to give speeches or writing things or sit in class and listen to something, that we didn't have the same cognitive demands at that time that we do now. And everybody's life looks differently.
Exactly. We have this weird idea that in order to achieve what we want, we almost need to put ourselves through pain. So we need to be starving, or we need to have keto flu, or we need to go through all these really challenging things, but we're going to get there. But I'm really adamant on this gentle approach to nutrition.
It's almost like a glamorization of the pain of a diet.
Exactly. So looking at your lifestyle and saying, how can I take a gentle approach to make it work for that early morning meeting and that midday, hustle that I'm going through, because maybe having no food in your body throughout that time isn't actually serving you.
So we've talked about a lot of the benefits of working with a holistic nutritionist, but I'm wondering if there's any risks that people may run into when they're thinking about a new way of eating, or, trying to make this big change in their life with what their diet is like.
Yeah, it opens up that opportunity for creating that restrictive eating and that stress around food. And I think going into any kind of elimination diet or changes in our eating behavior, recognizing its purpose and setting a time frame is important. So not back to glamorizing this idea of, I'm taking out all this food and this is the best part of things. It's you're taking out the food to figure out which food isn't working for you. You're setting a certain timeline to be able to evaluate those things, and you're coming back to how are you doing emotionally in this process? Because if you are getting extremely stressed out, deteriorating, your social networks are closing, it doesn't sound like that's going to be a good way for you to make your food adjustments. So you need to take into account working with clients, the big picture of what they're trying to achieve, and also giving steps for, let's do this for a certain amount of time and then reintroduce foods that are going to be okay for you, so that we don't just stick in this super restrictive. Certain times, if you really want to do an elimination plan because you are struggling with a serious digestive or health condition, you're going to probably have to go all out, full 100%, but there needs to be some acceptance at certain times in our lives that just won't work, or else we'll become extremely hard on ourselves. And treading cautiously and setting out good boundaries and parameters around changing your diet is important.
Because it sounds like it's something that you want to be able to support people through, and be maybe the person that they're talking to about the challenges that they're having with how they're now starting to think differently about their food or what they should and shouldn't be eating.
Exactly. And having that open discussion and making sure you keep that a part of the process is important.
So it sounds like, Andrea, you're a person that people come to when they're really struggling with something with their eating and they're wanting to make big changes. So I imagine you probably have quite a big influence on people when it comes to their relationship with food and their bodies. And I'm wondering what you see your role in that whole dynamic as being.
My role in supporting people with their relationship with food is one, to do my best to understand them and their history. And then two, my biggest responsibility is to give people permission, to be a sounding board, and then to give them permission to let go of whatever isn't working for them and to build their trust that they need. We often need people in our lives to hold that space for us. And I believe strongly I have my education in nutrition. I come from that place of knowledge around food, and I know the importance of educating my clients when they need it. And then past that, it's about being that person to say, let's give this a shot, and I'll be there along the way to help you discover what else is out there for you when it comes to food and how your relationship can change. There's always an opportunity to give tools, things to try step by step, be able to give case studies of times that this has worked in history for people. But yeah, just being someone to hold space and give permission to start to look at those things is important. Something I hold dear with what I do.
So thank you so much, Andrea, for sharing so much information about both your work and your experiences with clients. I think that it's really valuable information for people to have. Now, if somebody were interested in working with you, because you are available online, how would they go about beginning some work with you?
Thank you, firstly, for having me as well. I've been so happy to have this opportunity to chat with you about this important stuff. If people want to reach out to me, I do have my website, which is www.bitewellness.ca. And on my website, it lists my services and what it encompasses. And you can always reach out via my website. There's my email link there. And we can get in touch about how you'd want to work together and just have that initial. I always offer a 15-minute complimentary discovery call to make sure we'd be a good fit. So that's one of the best ways to reach me is on there. You can also follow me on social, which is at Bite Wellness. I'm open for emails. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me. My email is on the website, so you can find me there.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.